COVID under control. That's the message from the government as it announces it's relaxing restrictions. But it's the opposite in Hong Kong. Cases are skyrocketing. The city insists its zero COVID strategy is the only way forward. Also ahead, diplomacy is still an option. Russia says it's open to more talks to end the Ukraine crisis. Plus, turtles like you've never seen before. We take a look at the Lantern Festival, Penghu style. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan recorded 5 domestic cases of COVID-19 on Tuesday and 40 imported ones. Taiwan's government is confident in its COVID prevention measures, and as more people get their booster shots, the country will begin relaxing COVID restrictions. Bing Wang reports.
Starting Tuesday, these people at a cinema in Taiwan's capital of Taipei will be able to enjoy a popcorn with their movie. It's a part of a citywide easing of COVID restrictions, which have been in place since the start of the month. Taipei's mayor believes the city has transmissions under control.
在过去8天当中，我们台北市没有出现所谓不明感染源的案例，所以如果用这个标准的话，我们目前台北市的社区是干净的。
In addition to eating in cinemas, crowd limits at social education venues will be lifted. These places include the Taipei Zoo, museums, and senior learning centers. Taiwan is also planning to change quarantine rules for people entering the country. Health Minister Chen Sizong says this could happen next month.
好，那放宽的方向就跟大家讲，这缩短我们检疫的天数为10天，加上7天的自主健康管理。然后第二个我们要从这个全部都是在这种集中式的防疫旅馆或集中检疫所的，转换成开放1人1户和防疫旅馆，均可以作为居家检疫之处所的选择。
The country's borders have been closed since March 2020, but to help with business development, the government will soon allow business travelers back in.
都在防疫旅馆不同的进口的通道，然后相隔距离很远，口罩戴好，隔板戴好，那都可以来做一些产品的介绍、公司的介绍，然后对大家商务上需求的互谈。
The entry ban on migrant workers from Vietnam and the Philippines will also be removed. Previously, only migrant workers from Thailand and Indonesia were permitted to enter Taiwan. With COVID cases under control and more than 75% of the population fully vaccinated, health officials are easing restrictions, confident that Taiwan can contain any future outbreaks. James Raynor and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's domestically produced COVID-19 vaccine Medigen has received emergency use authorization in Paraguay after the unblinding of a clinical trial conducted in the South American country. The trial found that Medigen generated an average of 3.7 times as many neutralizing antibodies as the AstraZeneca vaccine, with no serious adverse reactions reported. Paraguay joins Taiwan as the only nations to have granted the Medigen vaccine emergency approval, although it is accepted for travel into several other countries. Medigen is also being tested as part of the World Health Organization's Phase 3 Solidarity trial, which may see the vaccine gain wider approval. Hong Kong's ongoing 5th wave of COVID-19 infections has reached new heights this week, with daily cases counted in the thousands for the first time ever. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick has more.
Another grim and startling milestone in Hong Kong's latest COVID-19 outbreak, as the territory exceeded 2,000 daily cases for the first time on Monday. On the same day, over 4,000 preliminary positives were also logged. Like the Chinese mainland, Hong Kong remains committed to maintaining a state of zero COVID, or what it now calls dynamic zero COVID.
我喺會上衷心感謝中央對香港嘅支持同埋關心，並且表示特區政府必定會堅持理念，以市民嘅生命同埋公共衛生安全為首位，以動態清零為目標。呢一個策略係最符合 香港嘅利益同埋實際情況嘅。
But cracks in this strategy are only widening. Hospital isolation wards have hit capacity, and paramedics say they are stretched to their limits, responding to new cases, some 80% of which are asymptomatic or preliminary positives. Public health experts say that the government's dynamic zero-COVID response needs to become much more dynamic.
As part of the zero COVID strategy that we have been implementing for the last 2 years, there has been universal isolation of all cases of COVID in either a hospital or some sort of isolation facility. Part of the fact that we are now in a world in which there is too many cases relative to our capacity, we have to explore other models of isolation. As of right now, we have a backlog in terms of the number of cases that are still trying to be admitted. And the reality is we will never be able to admit them. And we haven't seen the peak of this outbreak.
Mainland authorities have pledged to send more personnel and testing kits to Hong Kong and to help erect emergency field hospitals. But with thousands of new cases appearing every day, a more immediate solution is needed.
We really need to be able to find ways to ensure that only the most critical cases are ending up in the hospital at this stage and not trying to admit asymptomatic and mild cases into the hospital anymore. Regardless of whether you're still striving for zero COVID or you're just trying to manage and mitigate the impact of this outbreak, home isolation is a really critical component to that. We do need to find a way to provide information so that people can recover safely at home.
Hong Kong stands at a COVID crossroads, doubling down on zero COVID or transitioning to a longer-term solution. The city has had ample time to prepare. But when the idea of living with COVID has been condemned by Beijing as Western influence, Hong Kong's decision could come down to politics versus public health. Ryan Hill-Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has invoked the country's Emergencies Act for the first time ever. That's in a bid to end protests led by truckers opposed to a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Now in their third week, Freedom Convoy protests have paralysed the capital Ottawa and blocked key border crossings with the US. The Ambassador Bridge was cleared by police on Sunday, but hundreds of protesters are still on the streets. Invoking the Emergencies Act allows authorities to declare the protest illegal and break it up. Banks will also be able to freeze the accounts of people connected with the protest. But Trudeau says he will not call in the military to deal with the situation.
I want to be very clear. The scope of these measures will be time-limited, geographically targeted, as well as reasonable and proportionate to the threats they are meant to address.
A satellite jointly developed by Taiwan, India, Singapore and the United States was launched from a space center in eastern India on Monday. InspireSat-1 successfully began transmitting signals after leaving its carrier rocket and entering the Earth's orbit. The team behind the satellite says it will help scientists understand more about the Earth's upper atmosphere. Taiwan hopes to become an important contributor to future space programs, according to the country's Ministry of Science and Technology. A Kremlin spokesperson has said Russian President Vladimir Putin is willing to negotiate with Western leaders, amid fears that Russia plans to invade Ukraine this week. All parties are calling for dialogue, but as James Chater reports, military build-up and drills from both Russia and NATO countries are continuing unabated.
In the US state of North Carolina, US paratroopers prepare to deploy to Poland. These troops are among some 5,000 soldiers the US Defense Department is sending to the Eastern European country as fears of an imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine continue to circulate.
We train every day and we're prepared to take on any challenge.
The US maintains that a Russian invasion of Ukraine could begin as soon as Wednesday. In response, the US has closed its embassy in the Ukrainian capital and called for all Americans to leave Belarus. Belarus neighbours Ukraine and is Russia's closest ally in Europe. But despite concerns that Washington lacks proof a Russian invasion looms, US officials remain steadfast in their position.
We are basing our assessment on what we are seeing on the ground with our own eyes, which is a continued and unprovoked Russian buildup on the border with Ukraine and no accompanying evidence of de-escalation.
More than 100,000 Russian troops are at the border with Ukraine. Leaders in Moscow have denied they are planning an invasion, but they have said they could take unspecified action unless NATO agrees not to admit Ukraine. NATO and the US have rejected those demands. But amid the diplomatic stalemate, military exercises on both sides continue. Russian Su-30 fighter jets held patrol drills on Monday over the border between Russia and Belarus. And that's on the same day a US aircraft carrier stopped in Croatia after completing exercises with NATO allies. The military maneuvers come as global leaders implore all sides to prioritize dialogue.
Abandoning diplomacy for confrontation is not a step over a line, it is a dive over a cliff. In short, my appeal is this: do not fail the cause of peace.
On the streets of Ukraine, a seeming calm. The Ukrainian president has announced a national day of unity for Wednesday, the same day the US says an invasion of the country could begin. Klein Wang and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
A team from the International Atomic Energy Agency is starting inspections at Japan's wrecked Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant on Tuesday. Japan plans to discharge treated radioactive water from the facility into the ocean. Task force members will observe how the treated water is handled at the plant, located 220 kilometers northeast of the capital, Tokyo. The water is being stored in about 1,000 tanks, which are expected to reach their capacity of 1.37 million metric tons later this year. Last April, Japan announced a plan to discharge the contaminated water in stages after treatment and dilution, starting around spring of 2023. The decision is fiercely opposed by fishermen and locals, who worry about further damage to the reputation of their agriculture and fishing products. China and South Korea have also voiced protests, but the International Atomic Energy Agency says the discharge will meet international safety standards and won't harm public health or the environment.
The work of the task force will also demonstrate that the IAEA review is carried out in an objective, credible and science-based manner, and help send a message of transparency and confidence to the people in Japan and beyond.
Tuesday is the Lantern Festival, which marks the end of the Lunar New Year celebrations. In Taiwan's Penghu Islands, the festivities are being marked by some unusual turtles, as Louise Watt reports.
A turtle made of gold bricks. On Penghu, the Lantern Festival is a chance to get creative. Temples make turtles for peace and good fortune, and people come to pray for blessings in the new lunar year. People also come to ask the gods for answers using moon blocks. And if they fall in a particular formation, they get to take something home from this gold brick turtle. This year, turtles were made from rice and solar panels. One temple splashed out and made a turtle out of Ferrero Rocher chocolates. Less extravagant but no less cute are these turtles made from brown sugar cakes and pineapple buns. Penghu's Lantern Festival celebrations are on all this week, and it's hoped that through the folk custom of praying to turtles, everyone will have a good year. Patrick Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Stay with us here on TaiwanPlus. Coming up, we'll tell you how the COVID outbreak has helped these endangered sea turtles. Details in a moment.
最有人情味的地方。
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus. For more great news from Taiwan and around the world, download the app Taiwan Plus.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. Beef and dairy produce from Lithuania could be coming to stores in Taiwan. China banned several imports from the European country last week, including beef, dairy and beer. Beijing's decision comes after Lithuania allowed Taiwan to open a representative office under the name Taiwanese in its capital Vilnius last year. Lithuania has applied for these goods to be sold in Taiwan instead, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has received these requests.
外交部已经协助转达他们的需求给相关的主政机关，未来我们也将持续全力协助立陶宛应处中国的经济霸凌，共同捍卫国际贸易秩序的稳定。
Taiwan's status as one of the freest countries in Asia makes it a haven for dissident communities fearing persecution in authoritarian countries such as China. Among them is the local Tibetan community, which is holding a series of bike rides to commemorate the 63rd anniversary of the Tibetan uprising. Our partners at Radio Taiwan International have the story.
Cloaked in the Tibetan flag, these riders are part of a Cycling for a Free Tibet campaign leading up to the 63rd anniversary of Tibetan Uprising Day on March 10th. During the uprising, Tibetans came together in mass protests against China's military rule. But the rebellion was unsuccessful, and Beijing remains in control of the region over 70 years after its invasion. The campaign kicked off on February 9th. These riders braved the rain as they cycled from Taipei's 228 Peace Park to the legislature building for a press conference. They say their campaign is aimed at Chinese tourists and students in Taiwan.
中国自己也有遇到很多中国的留学生，他们也根本不知道中国里面发生什么事情，刘小波是怎么样，他们完全不知道的。所以我们觉得他们已经到一个民主国家上，让他们了解，让他们要知道中国里面的不平等的这些侵害人权的部分。所以我们在这边，不管西藏人第一代、第二代，我们继续努力。
4 more Cycling for a Free Tibet events are coming up in Taipei on February 16th and 23rd and March 2nd and 9th. Kaohsiung will host an event on March 6th, followed by Taichung on March 12th. Independent lawmaker Freddie Lim and new party power legislator Cho Shen-zi say they support Tibet's liberation. They are also calling on lawmakers to revise Taiwan's refugee policies so that people who are fleeing oppressive regimes can find a safe haven in Taiwan. As for the cycling campaign, these riders say they're willing to ride through rain or shine to spread their message across the country.
Hong Kong Watch, a human rights monitoring organisation based in the UK, says it has been blocked by Hong Kong's internet service providers. The website has been critical of Beijing's national security crackdown in the city. Local internet users found Tuesday that they couldn't access the website. The Beijing-imposed national security law has already had a major chilling effect on press freedom in Hong Kong. That includes the shutdown last year of the pro-democracy Apple Daily newspaper and the arrest of its founder, Jimmy Lai. Hong Kong telecoms companies have blocked access to at least 2 other activist websites in recent months. There are fears the city is moving towards the Great Firewall internet censorship model used in the rest of China. Scientists are using DNA to uncover the criminal networks used in the illegal trade in ivory. Researchers, led by Professor Samuel Wasser of the University of Washington, say DNA from seized elephant trunk tusks has allowed them to track where African elephants are being poached and how ivory is being smuggled. Trade in ivory has been banned since 1989, but Wasser says around 50,000 elephants are still being poached each year to meet demand.
These transnational criminal organizations we're trying to get, they are the key. Because once the ivory leaves their hands and gets out of Africa, it becomes so difficult to trace. But if they've been operating for years and this whole network of poaching and poachers and middlemen below them are all feeding their tusks up to the same guy, if you take him out, then there's nobody to buy the tusks from the poachers.
There are only 7 species of sea turtle in the world, but among them, 6 are endangered. The COVID pandemic and a barkeeper's dedicated efforts have saved its life. The population has risen in numbers on the shore in western Senegal. TaiwanPlus reporter Alice Chung has more on this inspiring story.
A group of sea turtles strives to reach the water after incubating for more than 2 months on a western Senegal shore. Every year, thousands of turtles lay eggs along the West African coast, but few hatchlings ever make it this far. Bar owner Jibril Yakate moved his business here after finding turtle eggs were being laid at his previous location.
Non, premier jour bi ñuy génn bu mu leen gisee dama doon jooy parce que ma xam ne li yàlla rek ko mën ñii ñoo mën a expliquer doomu aadama lan moo nekk ci biir bàmmeel.
Now, 50-year-old Jibril patrols the beach 75 nights a year, checking on sea turtles' eggs in cages, which are used to protect them from predators until they hatch.
Bugg ko rek sama doom aussi dama ci encouragé yenn saa damay nelaw sax mu yéema mu ne ma papa moo naati nen nañ ne mu ne ko ha.
Turtles have existed since the time of the dinosaurs, but now nearly all sea turtle species are endangered. The largest threat to their survival is human destruction of their beach habitat. But the COVID-19 outbreak may have offered them a respite.
L'année dernière, on a eu des moments de confinement avec l'existence du Covid. Du coup, les frontières étaient fermées. Donc, on n'a pas eu beaucoup de mouvements, que ce soit du côté mer ou côté des hôtels. Il y a moins de lumière. Et les tortues sont venues aussi pondre au niveau des plages. Ce qui explique que vraiment, depuis l'année dernière, on voit la retour des tortues marines.
The pandemic may have given the sea turtles of Senegal a chance at survival, but environmentalists say this shouldn't be taken for granted.
Donc, les tortues, pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas, donc elles jouent le rôle de nettoyeurs de l'océan. On les appelle souvent les éboueurs de l'océan d'ailleurs, parce qu'en fait elles permettent de réguler les herbiers marins en les mangeant, et dont ces herbiers marins dépendent beaucoup d'autres espèces comme le thon, le homard, la crevette. Si les tortues viennent à disparaître, on aurait la perte des écosystèmes et ça va créer un déséquilibre dans la chaîne alimentaire.
Over millennia, these creatures have helped create a stable and healthy marine environment. Now that they are at risk, environmentalists ask that people focus on protecting the turtles rather than contributing to their extinction. Alice Zheng for TaiwanPlus.
A Kun opera troupe in Taiwan is trying to change old stereotypes of the art form by putting on unconventional plays. Philip Brassard has this report.
This is Kun opera, one of the oldest forms of Chinese opera and a UNESCO human heritage art. Kun opera is known for its sentimental love stories, but the Shui Mo troupe in Taiwan is trying to change that.
就是主角呢都遇到了一些生命中的挫折，然后都非常的惊恐。
This particular play experiments with the line that separates reality from imagination.
花婆一面说故事要说的跟真的一样，然后呢一面要转过来告诉观众说，哎，你看他受骗了吧，他上当了吧，我成功了吧？对，所以就是这种真假之间还蛮有意思的，然后也是在目前昆曲舞台上很难得看到的一出戏。
With these plays, the Shui Mo Kun Opera Troupe hopes to show audiences that there's nothing imaginary about the versatility of this ancient art form. Patrick Chun and Philip Broussard for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally, today we leave you with some pictures of the Lantern Festival in Taichung, central Taiwan. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app. Stay safe and see you next time.